Get your cameras ready because I'm going to show you all of our classified data on costs. So let's jump right into it. Again, establishing any baseline, you've got to look at what things cost today, right? So you can see light aircraft in the black, you can see helicopters in the red, and right away you see helicopters are darn expensive. A lot of that is because they make only a few of them. For each model, most of them are less than 100 units per year. You can see that on a cost per pound basis of the empty weight, they're as expensive as commercial airliners. That's not good. It's related to both that low volume production and because there's lots of critical parts that are 2 to 3 times more expensive than a non-critical part. Our goal in the near term, we don't take any credit. We think that coming off the line in low volume production, these eVTOL aircraft are going to be about as expensive as light aircraft are today. Even though they get rid of the most expensive component, the turbine, there's a lot of development costs, and some of that's going to be amortized in those first low volume production years. But as we get to 10,000 units per year, which we think is very reasonable by 2030, then we get those economies of scale, high volume production of these non-critical components. That's when we can get that cost savings and get these vehicles under $1 million a piece. Moving on to the operating costs, you got to understand what they cost today. So you see a higher number here than I showed you before. That's because this is at 700 hours of utilization. So about $1,800 if we were to put a Bell into our network and operate it at 700 hours of utilization. You got to have equal utilization when you compare things to have a fair comparison. So what we really need to do is look at it if we were operating at 2,000 hours a year, which we will for eVTOL aircraft. But most helicopters operate at that lower utilization. Again, that's why they're so expensive. So you can see, looking across, if we operated helicopters 2,000 hours, this is where the money would go. And the big heavy hitters are maintenance and energy, and that's where eVTOL aircraft are fantastic. So we have this goal of at least a 35% decrease from existing small helicopters, translating to a goal of $700 per flight hour. Again, you see the blue comparison of the eVTOL to the red helicopter. It's pretty much all in the maintenance and energy costs. You can see the blue has 2 parts of it for the eVTOL. One is the actual electricity. The lighter color is that battery amortization. You got to be honest, these batteries are expensive. You got to amortize them as part of the cost. So deep diving into the maintenance. This is where we think this is on a per passenger seat mile to be able to appropriately compare it. So you see single engine helicopters are very, very expensive in terms of maintenance because they don't have as many passengers as twin engines, so they can't amortize the cost as effectively per passenger. We think we'll be basically halfway between twin engine helicopters and general aviation aircraft. It's kind of that middle ground between fixed wing and helis. Going one step deeper into decomposing that, this is where the cost is. Plus, if you're doing like air tourism, like they do in New York, they have to keep idling that. So you have that idling factor because that actually counts towards hours on your turbine. And your rotor head eVTOL aircraft don't need to idle. Those motors can turn off like that and don't need to keep spinning. You'll see a huge part of it is in the turbine. It's over $100 per hour. This is why we're pushing so aggressively to electric. Cost of electric motors restoration, it's like less than $5 per flight hour. Huge difference there. So big changes in terms of the maintenance cost. Again, a lot of that is getting rid of that part criticality so you don't have to have those frequent inspections. Jumping into the comparative cost of energy, right off the bat, you got to talk about batteries first. And that is, we understand what auto batteries cost at a pack level today. We did a detailed buildup using true cost and true planning to understand what these lighter packs that are certified are going to cost. We think there's going to be a 4 times multiplier on car battery to aerospace grade batteries. Big difference, but we think it's quite real. That gets us to a $600 to $700 per kilowatt hour cost. We think at the end of their life, after going through 1,300 cycles, which is again that 85% capacity, that we'll be able to break the modules apart and get a $50 per credit to sell them into stationary power. That translates to this amortized cost of about $76 to $90 per flight hour. Add in the fuel, so you can see these eVTOL, we're thinking they're at about $100 per flight hour for that true energy cost, compared to almost 3 times that for jet fuel for a turbine. Moving on, everybody brings this up to us every time. Pilot availability and cost. We're going with a Conklin and Decker type of helicopter pilot cost. That's $110,000 per year, fully burdened. In order to fly these aircraft 16 hours a day, we're going to need 3.1 pilots per aircraft. We've done many surveys. One of the things the pilots really like and why we think we'll attract them during this deployment cycle over the first 5 years is they loved the idea of being able to have a 40-hour per week job and stay in the same city. That is not what's offered by many of these other companies. So we think we have a significant advantage attracting pilots and even getting from helicopter pilots into fixed wing pilots as we apply simplified vehicle operation certificate, which is being worked by us and many other companies. So we think we've got a good case for pilot availability. We also, here's the summary waterfall chart of where you see the costs are compared to the helicopter today, how we get to $700 per flight hour or below. We think this is very realistic. This all points back to what Eric showed on the first day, which is this cost comparison and how in the near term, oops, can you back it up one, please? How in the near term, there should be an arrow there, but it's like Uber Air in the near term, that equates at $2 per passenger mile to about $700 per flight hour. That's how we think we're going to do it. Thanks very much for your time and attention.